Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to this week's installation of a Bisselle Torah, which is a little Torah rendered from the Yiddish into the English. And that's going to be exactly what we do today, looking at this week's Torah portion called Tzav. Tzav essentially deals with sinfulness and sacrifices. When we commit a crime, when we do a sin, that sin has to be within us, remains within us, until we find some means of expiation or teshuvah of that sin. A sin that goes unacknowledged, sits in our unconscious mind and weighs down on us very heavy. It doesn't go anywhere, even if we choose to ignore it, or even if we choose to rationalize it away. It doesn't go away. It sits there in the back of our mind, gnawing at us constantly. And we, as I said many times, rationalize it. They had it coming to them. I deserve better. I deserve this. They deserve that. But still we know the truth, and the truth won't go away until we confront the truth. And so the idea of bringing a korban, a sacrifice, to the Mizbeach, the altar, whether it was the altar in the wilderness or the altar that was a permanent one in Jerusalem, until we do something to acknowledge that sinfulness, it stays right there and often will grow with time. As they say, Avirah goreret Avirah. Oftentimes a sin gives birth to another and another and another sin. It's human nature. So the Torah tries to vie against this principle by saying, don't let it grow, don't let it fester, don't let it become greater than it should be. Do something immediately. Bring a korban and acknowledge it. So what does a korban have to do with teshuvah? What does a dove or a pigeon or a lamb that's brought to the Kohen, to the priest, to sacrifice, have to do with expiation and cleanliness, getting rid of the sin? When the animal is sacrificed by the Kohen, blood runs over the altar. The limbs are roasted on an open fire by the Kohen. And that's a representation of the excoriation of the self and of the soul. It's graphic, and it shouldn't turn you off, unless you're a vegetarian, in which case, okay, it may turn you off. But for those of us who are not vegetarian, when we consume an animal, it's really no different than the sacrifices that were done in days of old, when an animal was roasted on an open pit, but you saw it done. Instead of buying in the freezer in the supermarket, you saw it open, and that was a representation of you. The open wound that was offered as a gift to God to say, I'm really sorry for what I have done. I'm sorry for having committed this sin. And this is a way of cleansing the self, getting rid of that leaden weight that would otherwise only fester and grow inside of ourselves and become so unwieldy and so gross that it would change ultimately our character, ourself, into something that would be hideous. I think one of the important lessons that emerges out of this week's Sidra is this. We all do wrong. Nobody is a tzaddik in their life. Nobody goes through life perfectly without committing sins. We all do that. But what is so vital and so important is that when we've committed a crime, when we've committed a sin, is to face wholly up to that sinfulness, look at it straight and say to ourselves and to God, or to the other if we've hurt somebody, I'm sorry. I want to do teshuvah. I want to fully acknowledge my part in what has been done. And then we wash ourselves. We become whole and we become clean. Being a tzaddik is process. Becoming whole is not something that is gratis. It's something that we achieve through our life as we learn from the pains that we have committed and sometimes have been committed against us. Shabbat Shalom.